This is the GamesIndustry.biz Microcast. I'm James Batchelor, Editor-in-Chief of GamesIndustry.biz. I'm joined by Head of GamesIndustry.biz, Chris Dring. How are you, sir?
I am great. We've just done our HR Summit, Best Places to Work Awards, which is a monster project and has given me sleepless nights and lots of stress, and it's over. We've got a load of reports now, but the bit was over, and it was really good, and everyone came, and it was lovely, and lots of awards happened, and it was a really cool venue, and I'm really happy about it. So really good. How are you, James?
I'm good. Likewise, HR Summit was definitely a highlight of the week. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. I feel terrible because I've been getting tagged in LinkedIn posts. I'm getting emails. Oh, thank you so much, James and Chris. I'm like, I didn't do as much as Chris did. I don't think I should be getting that. I turned up and helped you. I don't think I should be getting.
You did
as
a good
much credit.
panel. It was a great panel.
I did do a good panel. That was a really interesting panel.
Difference between generations and stuff. What I found really fascinating about it was really. I had a sort of theme at the beginning, which was I said it in my little intro, was we talk about how difficult the world is at the minute, and leadership and the challenges of trying to deal with all these things. But these leaders and these HR people are having to deal with it themselves as well, and yet they're the ones that have to find the way forward. Whether it's how to do remote working, how to deal with all these layoffs, how to deal with whatever. These are the people that have to work out what to do. People are looking to these people for answers, and they don't know themselves. They don't have a cheat sheet. They have to try and work it out. And I sort of did that intro, not realizing how many of the talks we're going to talk about the burnout and the stress that the HR community are really suffering through at the minute. But anyway, it's interesting. You should some of that stuff will be up on the GI website over the course of the next few months, I suspect. But yeah,
absolutely.
Keep an eye on it.
Indeed. We are going to be talking about some of the biggest stories of the past week. We are not going to be talking for a full hour like we did last week with peers. We're going to try and keep this back to a microcast. A few stories that we don't have time to delve into deeply, but I did kind of want to bring up. First of all, Intel reportedly lost the contract with Sony to produce chips for PlayStation 6. That's now reportedly gone to AMD. We're already talking about PlayStation 6. We've only just announced the PS5 Pro.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like we're ready. I honestly think this generation is going to last a lot longer than previous generations. There are so many developers that haven't even got started on the machine yet. So many of the games are playable on old hardware. So many of the audience is still on the old hardware. To be talking about PS6 now, obviously all this stuff's in the planning, and they're all looking at it and planning for it. But I'm not. I think we're looking at 8-9 year plus. This is my prediction. Throw this in somebody clip this out and throw it at me in 2027 when I'm wrong. But I think we might be looking at an 8-9 year generation this time.
I think some analysts agree. When I was doing the PS5 Pro piece the other week, a lot of analysts were sort of when I was asking for sales projections, they were, we think by the end of the generation in 2028, 2029. It's really that is 8 years.
Yeah, but we're 4 years in now, and I feel like we haven't started.
Agreed.
I think it might be a bit longer.
Australia has introduced new rules for classifications for video games. Any games that have simulated gambling in them, so any kind of poker-like casino mini games, etc., are now legally restricted to adults and must be rated R18 at a minimum. There's a separate new rule that any games with in-game purchases linked to elements of chance, such as loot boxes, without gambling in imagery, so they are going to have a minimum rating of M, which is players who are 15 years old and over. Cracking down harder on the gambling stuff. That means EA Sports FC will have to be a 15 essentially in Australia.
Yeah, it's interesting that. Well, I don't know if I say, a lot of people are trying to link loot boxes to gambling because there's some similarity there. When I think loot boxes are problematic, but I think the gambling conversation is a distraction. I think it's something that we need to deal with as an industry and a society, but I don't necessarily think we have to just bulk it in with gambling laws necessarily. I wonder if it's its own issue. And while it sounds like with Australia, they're going, it's not gambling, it is an issue. We're going to create a different age-rated solution to it. Interesting.
Flappy Bird is back. After 10 years, 10 years after its own developer delisted it because he couldn't quite, he just didn't like how successful it had become. I can't remember the full details of why he'd pulled it off.
It was also a bit rubbish. And stole half the stuff from Mario, didn't it?
The visual assets, the bird and the VR. But Flappy Bird is back. The Flappy Bird Foundation Group, who is an organisation of passionate fans, I do that in air quotes on an audio podcast, they announced that they've acquired the Flappy Bird trademark from Game Tech Holdings, which itself acquired the trademark from Dong Nguyen. Dong Nguyen, the original developer, has come out on social media and said, like, I have nothing to do with this game. I did not sell anything. I didn't sell my trademark. I don't support crypto. There is a lot of confusion as to like whether or not the trademark simply expired. Stephen Totillo has apparently done a lot deeper reporting on his GameFile newsletter, so that might be worth a read. But yeah, Flappy Bird is back, and apparently that's a big deal.
I'm not going to pretend I'm interested in Flappy Bird.
No, fair enough. I bet you are more interested in EA had its investor day earlier this week.
Yeah, love it when EA say stuff.
Absolutely. Some of the things they said, they want to outpace market growth and drive margin expansion through fiscal year 2027. That's very kind of investor day-ish. But some of the highlights, like obviously consumer sites were nuts because the teaser for the new modern day Battlefield came out. EA announced they're launching an EA Sports app, which is going to offer a combination of sports content, live sports data, social messaging, interactivity, and gaming centered on global football. They talked about AI driving efficiency, and then there was a ton of Sims news. They essentially said they're not making The Sims 5, which everyone assumed Project Rene was. Project Rene isn't that. It is not cancelled. Whatever it is going to a multiplayer beta test soon. But they said like they're going to continue developing and expanding Sims 4. They're going to, I'm going to quote here, disrupt the sequel model and invest in a massive Sims platform. My only query, a lot of people have been, surely the entire games as a service, live service thing has been disrupting the sequel model for a good few years.
Yeah.
We'd be on like Fortnite 36 by now, surely.
Yeah. I love the fact that EA did, a lot of people picked up on that EA quote about AI doing this, that, and the other. But it's just like EA says things investors will like. Is what they do, right?
Yeah.
It's what they do, and they invest in it a little bit, and then ultimately we know their success is going to be depending on EA Sports FC, and it's going to depend on stuff like that. It's interesting. The Sims is if you follow EA's individual games, which I've done a few things on. You look at games like Skate and Dead Space, which are not their biggest franchises at all. They're quite small. They've done this thing where they actually announced those games, and got their players playing it. Really, really, really early. Like, this is not unusual. There are other companies that have done this, but they actually showed people the game when it's barely started development, and they've got the fans in really early. And then there's this other thing which they do with sports games now, where they keep talking about these sports games being platforms, which are like, what we're going to do is we're going to put loads of other new things in there, and we'll reach out to the world, and we'll involve real world sport and all this kind of stuff, which is, I guess, what that app might be part of. The Sims seems to be doing both of those things. Right? They've taken this, like, we're going to be having the fans in, The Sims 4. The big thing about The Sims 4 is The Sims generally. They used to do these packs, right? Where they would go, here's a pack and it touches on something pop culture-y and cool at the time. But pop culture moves so fast today. Everything happens so quickly. And also it's so splintered. Like, what's pop culture to us is different to an entirely different audience and different people. What's big on TikTok isn't what's big on Twitter and all this sort of stuff. EA can't keep up. The Sims company can't keep up. So they're basically going, hey guys, do you want to make it for us, fans? and that's what they do. And they've always had the ability for fans to make this stuff, but they're really going, that's where they're pushing things now, that, they can't keep up with packs and doing it themselves. They're getting the fans to do it for them. They're going to talk about rewarding those fans in some way as well. So it's quite interesting what they're doing there. They also have this Sims Labs thing where they're going to put out like early concept ideas and things for Sims players to play and decide what actually gets made, or whether or not things need to get changed and stuff like that. So that's their big thing. Their big thing is giving the tools for the fans, letting the fans decide the direction of the Sims, rather than going, yep, this is how we see the future of the Sims. Here's the Sims 5. You take it into that sort of direction. I know this because I spoke to the Sims people. The interview may be on the site by the time you listen to this. It might not be, but it is a that's their whole strategy around the Sims. It's all about. But whenever I hear that we're looking to build a platform, I'm like, what does that mean? What's a platform? I just picture something from the stand on, like a Yellow Pages, to sort of with a microphone yelling. But yeah, it's that's the whole EA thing, isn't it? It's building things that can branch out beyond the world of games and into general culture.
Beyond that, the only other story I wanted to touch on before we dive into the main topic was Reforge. This was a new game announced earlier this week. This was quite interesting, and I'm going to let you intro this because you did the interview.
Yeah, so Reforge. Well, what I found interesting about it is, so Reforge is by 4J Studios. I know 4J Studios because they did the HD remasters of Perfect Dark and Banjo-Kazooie. Most people know 4J because they are responsible for the Minecraft console ports, which are actually they're really well done. They used to be anyway. I'm not sure about the more modern ones, but 4J have they don't do those anymore. And they released a game last year, a small game. They're now trying to make their first original game, which isn't Minecraft 2, but looks an awful lot like Minecraft 2. And so they're making their own. What they've done is they've built their own engine, something called the Elements engine, and it's a next gen engine or a current gen engine, basically Xbox Series S onwards. The game they're making for it, Reforge, will not be on PS4. It will not be on older mobile phones. I mean, theoretically, it could be on future mobile phones. It won't be on Switch. It's an engine that's looking forward. They're building it. They're making a game. They obviously know their Minecraft stuff, but what they've also done is they've brought in a guy called Joseph Garrett, who the world will know as Stampy long nose, Stampy long head, Stampy stamp. I'm not a Stampy know it all, but he's a very, very, very smart YouTuber. They haven't brought him in as like some weird. Not even weird, some sort of endorsement or anything like that where he sends a bit of feedback in once a month. He actually works for them. He's there 3 days a week in their studio, in their game design team. He's been given, he's got team tasks to complete. This is his job now. His job is, he's a game developer and he's making a game that isn't Minecraft, but is sort of Minecraft. And it's been made by the studio and it's been made on this new forward facing engine. So it's an interesting concept. 4J are a great little studio. They're quite well regarded in Scotland and in the UK. And it's a bit of a big test for them. You know, they're a small team. They're trying to take on the world. I think what's reassuring is they're not looking for like 100,000 players in like a month or whatever. Their plan is like, let's get a small community of diehard fans, which they already have through Minecraft, into the game, get them to help them develop the game with them in the same way the Sims are talking about, get them in at the very earliest opportunity and develop this project alongside them. And then when it gets to a certain point, a certain scale, they may need some help. They do have some partner studios they can work with to a point. Then after that, you may maybe a 10-cent deals down the line or whatever, an EA deal or something, which allows them to be able to do something a bit bigger. It sounds good. It sounds reassuring. It sounds great. I've not, and it was a good chatting to them and hearing about it. And they seem confident, which should be fun. But yeah, I don't obviously. A live service sandbox survival game made by an indie, normally you go, yep, good luck going up against Minecraft. But if anyone can do it, it's the people that know Minecraft better than anyone, know that audience better than anyone, and have realistic expectations. So good luck to them.
Yeah, intrigued to see how that one turns out. We're going to dive into our main topic, which is, as almost certainly everyone has guessed, Pokémon versus Palworld. So the lawsuit that everyone was expecting, but not the lawsuit that everyone was expecting. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company has filed a lawsuit against Pocketpair, which is the developer of Palworld, but it's not the IP infringement, copyright infringement that everyone expected because the monsters look quite like Pokemon. It's a lawsuit for infringing multiple patent rights. Now, they haven't specified which patents they are infringing. Pocketpair, in its own statement, claims that it hasn't even been notified of which patents it's allegedly infringing. I imagine that will go through all the courts and so forth. It's all been filed with the Tokyo District Court, so legal proceedings will continue. It's really interesting. When Palworld came out in February, when Palworld was first announced a couple of years ago, everyone was like, this is Pokemon with guns. And it has been unofficially just referred to as Pokemon with guns from the beginning. Because more than quite a few of the monsters pass more than a passing resemblance to familiar Pokemon. When it came out, that whole debate came up again. I actually spoke to some legal experts on GI, so there's a whole feature you can read there. It's linked in the lawsuit story. And it's been interesting because it shows like it's not as clear-cut a case as that looks like that, therefore it's infringing. Like, the onus of proof on Nintendo and the Pokemon companies it would be difficult to kind of show you've copied our monsters. And it's interesting. It's kind of showing like how far developers can go in taking inspiration from something without copying, infringing on their rights.
I think this comes down to a little bit in whether or not you piss Nintendo off. Nintendo have an awful lot of patents, right? They have a lot of things that, example, they have a patent, I've read somewhere, they have a patent where, when a character goes behind a tree in a 2D game and then you see their shadow outline in that. Yeah, Nintendo have a patent on that. Right, and it's not that they, I've got, my best mate lives in Leicester in the UK. There is a fish and chip shop around the corner of his house called Mario's with a crudely drawn picture of Mario on the front, right? And they've been there for 20 years. Yeah. So there is this. I think the thing, Nintendo probably could sue a lot of people, and in fact, a lot of the times they seem to be promoting games that seem a bit similar to their games. My theory with this one is, okay, maybe this game has been too successful. I think the other thing is worth remembering that the reason why Nintendo are so litigious, the reason why they're so defensive of their IP is because it is what they are, right? So whether their consoles go through good points or bad points, what's always been stable is the popularity of their brands. They are Mario. They are, Pokemon's co-owned. They are Zelda. That is their strength. Their strength is in their IP. So they're always quite defensive of it. They don't want people ripping them off. But I don't think this is... Palworld plays nothing like Pokemon, really. It looks like Pokemon. It looks like Pokemon, and it's Pokemon with guns. Now, that, for me, is going... If I was Nintendo, I'd be pissed off with that. Right? They don't want an association with Pokemon and guns. They don't... That's not what they'll be angry about it. And I suspect they're angry about it. And so they've drawn up their patents, like, right, what can we do? How can we go after this? And I'm sure the fact that it looks a little bit like Pikachu or whatever, it wasn't enough, and they've had to dig a bit deeper in order to fight them. The truth is, though, they have done this before. They have attacked other games before and won. They actually win quite a lot, Nintendo, at this. But a lot of the times, those games don't disappear. They don't get taken off the market. They just have to start paying a fee. And maybe there's a fine up front. So I don't think this is the end of Palworld. I think you need to remember that Palworld's not only was Palworld a massive hit when it came out, there's now talking about Sony's, which is Nintendo's rival, is turning it into a mass media franchise. They're talking about releasing the game on PlayStation 5 now. It's becoming a bigger thing, potentially. I don't think the game's good enough, to be honest. I'm skeptical about how much legs Palworld has beyond its initial buzz. But that is probably what Nintendo want to, because ultimately, there is a truth to the fact that, let's be honest, they didn't have to make it look like Pokemon. No, they did it for a reason, and the reason is pissed off Nintendo. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. PC Gamer's Lincoln Carpenter actually did a little digging into what patent. Like we still don't have confirmation of which patent it is, but PC Gamer's Lincoln Carpenter has come up with a fairly decent guess. Nintendo apparently patented the. I won't say it like legal speak, but essentially the ability to catch a creature in the running around the game world in a capsule. So like you can't protect
Pokeballs.
Pokeballs, essentially, yeah. You can't protect the ability to, like, in a game, you come across a creature and you fight it and you beat it and it joins your party. You can't protect that. But it's specifically like the mechanic of it. Palworld uses PAL spheres, not Pokeballs, but they still do like the little wobble, the little jiggle to say, "Oh, did you catch it?" etc. There was apparently a patent that Nintendo filed in the US and Japan during the development of Pokemon Legends Arceus, which obviously has you going around open areas, throwing Pokeballs and catching Pokemon in that way, and it's not. Whereas all like the traditional Pokemon games, it's all done separately from the game world in a battle. This is like in the game world. That's the best guess as to what they've been able to go for. I'm intrigued to see how well this will go. Like Nintendo, if Nintendo think it had enough grounds to do a copyright infringement, IP infringement, like one of the most iconic Palworld monsters, which I don't know the name of, but it's the big yellow and black one that carries a Gatling gun, is essentially an Electabuzz, but slightly different. Like the design differences between the two monsters and then most of the other monsters are different enough that Nintendo must know that they can't win on those grounds, despite the fact that like loads of kind of Pokemon fans are like, how is this allowed? How is this? When the game first came out, like the reaction was, oh, this isn't just an easy win for Nintendo. It's not. It's not an easy win. You have to be really specific, or you have to prove that your assets, your creations have been stolen or directly copied. You have to prove that they have copied in order to win on that ground. So the fact they're going down the patent route, and on a really, if this is the correct patent, like a really specific mechanic, like you're right, that even if that's not going to be enough to take the game down, like the absolute worst comes to worst, I imagine Nintendo would be paid damages, and Pocketpair would have to like patch something in and change the way that the catching mechanic works. But the rest of the game would survive, absolutely fine. It's just it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see. As you say, like I think an element of it is because Palworld has been so successful. So this will not only be to argue that Palworld's success has come from its association with Pokemon, and Nintendo, the Pokemon companies, owned patents, owned assets, whatever. It will also be to dissuade other people, because as when anything is a hit, we will get Palworld copies in 3-4 years' time, because someone will have looked at it and go, I can do that, and make their own versions. And so this is kind of to dissuade, this lawsuit is also partly to dissuade those people from going too close to the mark when it comes to infringing on Nintendo and Pokemon's rights.
Yeah. A lot of the time when Nintendo do this, when they go after a fan making a remake of something, and they're going, well, is it really doing any harm? No, it's not. It's less about the harm that it's less about that. It's more about the what's the word? I'm trying to find the legal term. I can't find the word. What's the word, James? The word for like the expectation, what people, the example it sets.
That's the one.
The precedent. That's the word I'm looking for. Precedent. It's that kind of thing that it's.
The other thing is, like, so Nintendo actually have already proven what they'll do to protect Pokemon, and the Pokemon Company have proven what they'll do to protect Pokemon, like, really recently. Like, I think it was barely a couple of days before the news of the lawsuit came out. The Pokemon Company won a $15 million copyright and intellectual property theft lawsuit against several Chinese companies that were involved in a game called Pocket Monster Reissue. And that game had literally lifted the characters Ash Ketchum from the animated series and Pikachu. Like, those characters were in the game, like not even copies or slight. We were inspired by, like, it was those characters. Similarly, when Palworld first came out, some user modded Palworld to introduce recognizable Pokemon characters, including Ash Ketchum, and Nintendo had those taken down. It could take the mods down because those directly infringed on the right. It couldn't take down Pokemon. Take down Palworld. I find all this stuff really fascinating as to where's the line? Where's the line to what people can, because this goes into, we're going into like a much broader topic here, but this goes into what you can and can't protect with video game development and game design, and the effect that has on the industry. So you were talking earlier about the fact that Nintendo has patented the fact that you can see the shadow behind a tree, like that. To me, as someone who doesn't have things to protect, doesn't feel like something that needs protected. I don't see the issue of another developer using that. And the thing that this whole conversation is bringing to mind, weirdly, is Warner Brothers trying to patent the Nemesis system, like the Nemesis system in Shadow of Mordor, where enemies can react and remember and have kind of bespoke counters with players, was protected to the point where no one else has tried to do something similar. I think there's something vaguely similar in the Assassin's Creed games, but for fear of litigation. But you look at that system as like, but if that were used in other games, like think how that could be. I'm not saying like shadow illustrations could massively improve other games, but like if we protect ideas too closely, we limit the innovation that we can have.
Yeah. It's that weird thing. You want to take. I understand. You can understand. People create a good idea and they want to take an element of ownership of it. This was our idea. I don't want to. I want to own it. But at the same time, we should be able to iterate and build on those things to improve them and further the industry and that innovation onwards. And you're sort of reliant on the companies that have patented it not being arseholes and going, oh, okay, it's not harming us. It's a very different thing in a different setting and a different, you should never expect a morality from a corporate beast. So yeah, there's certainly, it's interesting. Like a lot of people were talking about how Palworld should be sued, Nintendo should go after them, and now Nintendo have gone after them. There's a bunch of people going, this is outrageous. And I don't know. I sort of seen Palworld. I know it does look like Pokemon. It doesn't play like.
It doesn't
Pokemon.
play even vaguely like Pokemon. No.
It's a different type of game. And the only thing I would say is anything that's making me go sort of against Pocketpair is the fact they're using the fact that people compared it to Pokemon as one of the reasons why it got so much attention in the first place. And it lent on the Pokemon comparisons in order to help it sell the amount of copies it's doing. And you can understand why Nintendo might resent that. You know, how many press releases do we get where it says this game is Metroid, or this is Luigi's Mansion with sex toys? Yeah. Like it's the
I've had one the last couple of weeks. This is Pokemon meets Vampire Survivors.
Yeah,
like
it's
yeah.
Everyone uses something as a point of reference and they lean into it from a marketing point of view. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, Nintendo don't tend to lose these things, but I think Pocketpair will live on and have a very successful Palworld, and if anything. I hadn't thought about Palworld for a long time.
No.
So Nintendo's given it a bit of a boost. I wouldn't be surprised if we see their numbers jump up over the weekend.
Last thought is that this will be a really interesting one to follow because Palworld is so prominent, because Palworld has been such a hit. I mean, you may have forgotten about it, but a lot of people are still playing it. It's one of the biggest hits this year. You compare that to Pocket Monster reissue, the one that Pokemon Company won an IP theft. Like, no one had heard of that until it got sued. But there's a lot of copycats. But there was another game, I can't remember, there was an article I read about another game Nintendo went after for similar things, which is a mobile game in Japan. It's actually really big in Japan, and Nintendo won that, but that game still exists and it's still going on, and it's just they have to give a little bit of their success to Nintendo. I think we all probably end up. I think to be fair, if we all be honest with ourselves, we all owe a little bit of our success to Nintendo. But yeah, it'll be interesting to follow. I think it will open our eyes, the industry's people's eyes a little bit to all of that for good or for ill. Follow it we shall. However, we are going to follow this now with our final segment for this week. It's the time of the week where I get to ask you, Chris, what do the numbers mean?
I don't know anymore, James. I've had to make 2 predictions on this podcast so far. I thought, let's just do one where we talk about how well a game's going to do. And one was Star Wars Outlaws, and I got that one wrong. And the other one was Astro Bot. And Astro Bot, I don't think we got wrong. But it's we called it a breakout, which is quite a me going, that could be successful. I want to give you some stats. Now we have the European data in now for the first week of Astro Bot. We have a lot of it in for the second week of Astro Bot as well, but I thought I'd focus on the first week. Astro Bot was actually the best-selling game that week in Europe that came out. Its sales are 2% up over Ratchet and Clank, which came out in 2021. It's 52% bigger than Crash Bandicoot 4. It's 100% bigger than the launch of Sonic Frontiers. It was 48% smaller than Spyro Reignited Trilogy's launch and 59% smaller than Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy's launch. So the question is, has it done well? The answer is yes. And the reason why there's an awful lot of people on my social media that are trying to insist to me this game has flopped, and it absolutely has not flopped. I think there's you need to contact platform games. There are fans of platform games like you, James. You're a fan of platformers. I adore platformers. Yeah. I'm somebody there day one on a platformer. But most times these games are targeting an audience that's often younger, broader, more family orientated. These people are not going, I need to be there at day one. I need to have my pre-order in. I need to get the special edition. Right? They're not. That's not what the audience for these games are. So therefore, you see. If you look at Mario Wonder, right, compare it to Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom sold 10 million copies in a weekend. And Mario Wonder got to 5 million. Mario's a big brand, right? It does have hardcore fans, but it didn't do anywhere near that number in the weekend. Yet over the course of its life, it's got a lot closer to Zelda because it kept selling. And that's what platform games do. Ratchet and Clank, for instance, only 2% up over Ratchet and Clank. But Ratchet and Clank isn't really a platform game. It's colourful and it's got cute animals in it, but it's a shooter. It's an action-adventure game. It does have a hardcore audience. So that audience is more likely to come out day one. Indeed, it did come out day one. Ratchet and Clank's most of its sales were early on in its life. Crash Bandicoot 4 and Sonic Frontiers, the numbers I just gave you there, you may think their launches were failures, but Crash Bandicoot 4 has gone on to sell 5 million copies. Sonic Frontiers is the most successful 3D Sonic game ever made, right? So you've got that. So the early launch of that doesn't really indicate how well those games did at all. And obviously Crash Bandicoot, the collections, the Spyro and Crash collections, have a nostalgic play element to it, where you're going to, again, appeal to slightly more hardcore gamers that may have been brought up on those games. They're more likely to have strong week ones. This is not me defending Astro Bot. Astro Bot's numbers are really strong. They're really strong for a platform game particularly on a console that is not known for. Yeah, they are known for platform games, but it's not Nintendo. So it's actually been a decent hit. What I would say is I was wrong to suggest it was going to be a breakout, like a mega boom seller, right? It's not been that. It's been a decent seller, very good seller. And when you think about the size of that team, we talked about it last week. And so I think, we've got the first numbers in. This game is great. The key to success of Astro Bot will not be decided in these 2 weeks, in this month, in October. It'll be decided over a long, long period of time. And as Piers was saying to us last week, it'll be evergreen. I'll be honest with you, James, spent a lot of time talking about Astro Bot there. I'm not really here to talk about Astro Bot. I'm talking about something that's actually been a proper mega hit. Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. Now, when we talked about it last week, I talked about it being the fastest selling Warhammer game. One fact I failed to mention last week is the game wasn't even out yet.